So that's the case for Kamala. Let's do the case against Kamala and what makes Democrats so nervous. And we'll start by rolling this clip, this famous clip from the debate in the summer of 2019 when Kamala Harris was running for president. The substance of what you're about to watch is important, but in some ways almost less important than what it says about who Kamala Harris is as a politician, as a candidate. So let's roll this and then talk about the problems that a lot of Democrats are identifying around this that have not, they don't believe, been reformed yet.
Congresswoman Gabbard, you took issue with Senator Harris confronting Vice President Biden at the last debate. You called it a, quote, false accusation that Joe Biden is a racist. What's your response?
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting Black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response.
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that work. And I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform. That is why we created initiatives that were about reentering former offenders and getting them counseling. It is why, and because I know that criminal justice system is so broken, that I am an advocate for what we need to do to not only decriminalize, but legalize marijuana in the United States.
I want to bring Congresswoman Gabbard back in. Your response, please.
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you are in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
And so what's important to understand about that exchange, we can put a D10 here. So in January of 2019, Lara Bazelon wrote a column in the New York Times, which was widely read across Democratic circles, that basically formed the research that Tulsi Gabbard used in her annihilation of Kamala Harris there. And Bazelon is part of the Bazelon family that is kind of legal royalty in Democratic circles.
Okay.
And so this was a pitch that Kamala Harris saw coming for 6 months, 7 months.
Right.
The debate was in July. This was published in January. This was the knock on her throughout the campaign. So you can talk about the substance of the critique that Tulsi makes, and it's strong and it resonates with people on the left far more than it will resonate with people on the right. But what it also says is, how did you not have an answer for that by that point?
Right.
Because think about what she said there. So first she said, I did the work. I didn't just give speeches. I reformed the system, and I want to legalize marijuana. Nowhere in there is a single response
to what Tulsi
anything
lays
that
out.
Tulsi said, and then it enabled Tulsi to come back and just finish her off with, okay, well, you didn't respond.
Right.
So how did you have nothing there?
Yeah, that's the thing is Kamala Harris, my impression of her during 2020 is when she was prepared, like when she had her scripted lines ready to go, she was good at delivering them. Mm-hmm. And, it actually makes sense with a prosecutor background. Like she's good in that role when she's the one leading the charge, when she's the one pushing the conversation. She's not as good when she's having to respond, when she's having to think on her feet. And now the other piece here goes to also preparation. This was something else that her staff was leaking about her after her campaign imploded, which is that she didn't, quote unquote, do the work when it came to preparing. preparing for these instances. And then when she was caught flat-footed and doesn't have a response to what is an obvious, coming line of attack, then she would blow up at her staffers and blame them when they would say, oh, listen, you had the briefing, like you could have done the work and been prepared for this moment, but we can only do so much. You have to be the one that actually does that and ultimately performs. The irony, of course, of this, first of all, number one, you would never hear Tulsi Gabbard talking like this today with her hard right turn. That's number one. Yeah, I was like, oh, I remember why I used to like this lady, right? That's number one. Number two, I've seen a bunch of lefties, I'm sure you've seen this too, like, all right, leftists, stop talking about her good voting record in the Senate. Now going back to calling her a cop so that the general public wants to vote for her in election. So the Trump campaign is going to take the exact opposite tact with her and have already telegraphed and already started to put these pitches out that she was, quote unquote, soft on crime when she was in California as part of, what they portray as like a hellscape, dystopian hellscape in the state of California, and is too liberal, coastal, liberal, elite, et cetera, et cetera. Like that's going to be the brush they paint her with. But you're 100% correct. It's not the substance here that she has to worry about, because in a way, the attacks that Tulsi is making on her here, like you will never hear those same attacks on her from a Republican. That's going to be an issue. But the fact that she was so unable to handle it in the moment, even though it was so predictable, it's consistent with a number of Kamala Harris moments that we've seen that have not gone particularly well for her. And so perhaps it looks like Donald Trump now is getting a little squeamish about having to debate her. He put on a truth that was like, well, I only want to do it if it's on Fox News. I think she would have a hard time debating him, because his whole thing is throwing people off balance. And I think that's a difficult place for her to be. In a sense, I relate to it because I'm much better prepared and thought through than I am just off the cuff on my feet as well. But it is not her strength to be in a sort of chaotic free-for-all type of environment where she can't have digested all her talking points and be just ready to go with them.
And on the substance though, I'm not actually certain that Trump won't hit her with this stuff. Trump loves to talk about how he did the First Step Act, which was that move towards criminal justice reform that he did with Jared Kushner and Van Jones. And I think you are going to see kind of targeted attacks at kind of progressive voters, the Black community generally.
That's true. That's a good point.
That maybe don't have the campaign's fingerprints, but you're going to see a lot of, and you'll hear probably about the people who appear to be innocent that are still in prison to this
Ads
day.
on Black radio stations, mailers going out to certain communities
because
that would
Kamala
be sensitive to this.
refused to allow the evidence to be seen. So another example that we have that you will probably all remember of a pitch that you could see coming from miles and miles away, and her just badly whiffing on. And your point about her staff complaining that she refuses to prepare for these is very important, because that goes to her ability to campaign and to govern. This other one was, if you remember, she was assigned dealing with the border crisis, and the media and particularly Fox, but the media in general, for weeks had this meme going of, when is Kamala Harris going to go visit the border? Why won't she visit the border? Because the argument is it's a complete catastrophe down at the border. Once you see it with your own eyes, you can't deny it any longer, and then you have to actually commit to solving the problem. So the question, when are you going to go to the border, was already being publicly asked of Kamala Harris constantly when she sat down for this interview, got that question, and good Lord, watch the answer.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
I'm here in Guatemala today. At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe.
Oh,
We've been to the border. We've been to the border. You haven't been to the border.
well,
That's true.
we haven't been to Europe either.
Haven't been to Europe. And she also has two moves, if you've noticed. The one is she'll do the laugh.
Yeah.
To disarm people and oh God, just the laugh. And Trump is already calling her Laughing Kamala. I'm not sure that works.
It's not his best nickname.
It's not his best nickname. Her other move is indignation, which she did, kind of fake indignation. She did it in response to Tulsi. How dare you? I'm doing the work.
Right.
And she did it to Lester Holt there, a little indignant, we've been to the border.
Right.
It's what?
This whole idea We have been to the border, but you haven't been to the border. Well.
So first she starts with just throws her hand up.
Yeah.
And if you guys want, just scroll it back, watch it again, just to see how just epically bad it was. First she throws her hands up and says, we're in Guatemala. And remember, she knew this question was coming. And I think it's a dumb gotcha question. Who cares if she goes to the border or not? What your border policy is what actually matters. That's not the point. The point is she knew the question was coming. When are you going to the border? Why haven't you gone yet? First she throws her hands up and says, well, we're in Guatemala. Then she says, we're going to go to the border. Then she just freezes and all out of nowhere just says, we've been to the border.
Right.
Like that is not an A-level politician answer.
No.
That's a Selena Meyer level answer.
Not even close. And but the question is whether you need an A-level politician to beat Trump at this point.
That is the Democrats' hope at this point.
Yeah.
And it's also possible. Trump is historically unpopular.
Yeah.
And now the other question is what happens to Democrats if she's president for 4 years and governs like that? Now maybe she can grow in the office and learn. But if she refuses to prepare going forward as president, beating Trump for Democrats is the number one priority, and they'll figure everything else out later.
Yeah.
But a historically unpopular president wouldn't be good either.
Right. No, that's absolutely the case. And, in terms of it's almost a fool's errand to try to divine what her actual policy views are.
Yeah.
Because, and this was the thing about her 2020 campaign, is Stafford in the postmortem was saying, we were changing slogans with the seasons. It was from the beginning to the middle to the, almost end to the complete end. They kept shifting and kept trying to pivot. You brought up earlier how when it looked like the thing to do was to get it to the left in the party and to sign on to Medicare for all, she did that. She tries to embrace the debate. She gets backlash from donors. Then she tries to run away from that. So there wasn't any real ideological core in evidence. And so you can kind of look at her record through whatever prism you want. When she was AG of California, when she was in California, she was, I would say, more conservative. She was very friendly with Silicon Valley, very friendly with the business community there. This was at a time, and it was a time when it was really consequential when she was AG, when you had the rise of these giant tech monopolies. She also was, David Dayen has done great work about, her coziness with banks and some of the bad decisions she made with regard to that. Her record in the Senate, that's when she decides the lane is to be progressive, right? And to sort of hug the Warren Bernie side of the aisle. She thought that would be her pathway forward. And so if you look at her voting record and things she championed there, then you come away with a very different impression. I think the general public impression of her is just sort of California liberal. Probably the issues she has the most ideological commitment to are social issues. I think she probably genuinely cares about abortion and has been a fairly effective messenger on abortion. And that happens to be a good issue for her to be an effective messenger on right at the moment, given how important that has been to Democratic fortunes of late.
Yeah, there was this really revealing moment, to your point, where she was on Colbert, and he pressed her on, you called Biden racist at this debate and really brutalized him, and now you're his vice president. She laughed and said it was a debate.
Right.
And he was he didn't quite get the joke, but what she was trying to say was, I didn't mean it.
Right. I was just saying that for the cameras.
It's just politics. I just say things because I think they're going to work for me in that moment. And it's funny that you think anything different. It's oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. I thought we were taking this seriously.
Yeah. So I
guess I'm the sucker.
How do you handicap it at this point in terms of her likelihood of succeeding in the fall?
I think 50-50, I think. Because Trump is just, they're both going to be, they're both unpopular.
Right.
But somebody's got to win.
Right. Yeah. I think I'd probably still give Trump the edge. Just given, he's such a known quantity, given, listen, I don't want to deny that racism and sexism exists, that there will be some group of voters who can't envision her in the commander-in-chief role because we've never seen it before. I do think that those are real challenges that she'll have to overcome. I think she is definitely not an A-plus political player. She came up in California politics because of basically the California Democratic Party machine. So it's not like she really, wowed people there and won them over. She completely flops in 2020. So it's not like there's an electoral track record of success that you can really pin on Kamala Harris. So I think it's better odds than not that even with Kamala as the nominee, Trump still wins the White House back. But she got a better shot than Biden.
Yeah. A friend suggested she run on the slogan, "I know you don't like me, but I will fight for you." It's the best we can do.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.